Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Big amendments to next year's set of regulations with the FIA reducing the number of power unit components allowed per team going into the upcoming season. Rumour has it that Mercedes and Red Bull pushed hard for these changes, believing that it's going to significantly hurt Ferrari and Alpine going into the new season. More races than ever, more sprints than ever, but less ICE, especially components than ever. What does this mean for the reliability of these teams going forward and for potential penalties coming into play? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. First of all, a couple of things going on, such as this from Williams, confirming Craig Woodhouse as their head of communications. Now, if you're very eagle-eyed, you might have noticed that this Williams logo in the background is not the same as their current Williams logo. People pointing out that it seems like they are changing the font on their logo. This has kind of been a thing with basically every company that's known in the last several years changes their logo to become more simple and less extravagant. I don't know if you guys like this trend or not. I kind of don't. This is the current Williams. It's such a minor thing. I don't know if you guys really care, but people were talking about it, and well, good and for bad, so I thought I'd mention it. This is the current Williams racing logo. You guys can see the W's with the lines in them. They're not fully compact or whatever. This is what it says now, which is clearly not like that. So I don't know if that's actually going to happen, because I'm not sure I'm a massive fan of it. But whatever, teams and companies, they just seem to rebrand for no reason as far as I'm concerned. Couple of bits of drama going around. There were some rumours about Lance Stroll's future, just because we know what's happening right now with Aston Martin. Potentially behind the scenes, there's rumours of expanded investment from Aramco, and whether Lawrence Stroll is thinking, you know what, I've built this up pretty well, built my investment in Aston Martin up pretty well over the last few years in terms of what it's now worth. The factory in Silverstone, Stroll's had his chance. Lance Stroll, of course, that being in the car, and look, he's done okay, but nowhere near his last couple of teammates, really, especially, of course, this past season against Fernando Alonso. Rumours whether Lance Stroll is really fully committed to the long term, and therefore there's been rumours about, okay, what about Alex Albon? What about even Yuki Tsunoda, especially because of the Honda partnership, the relationship there? So there's been talk about it. Do I think Stroll is going to disappear while, Big Daddy is still in charge? Probably not, but that might not be the case for too much longer, to be fair. Yesterday, we saw loads of drama, as always, about the FIA. And to be fair, it's also still related to what we're going to discuss in a few minutes' time, because at the end of the day, people will see the reduction in power unit components and say, well, isn't that kind of forcing penalties, i.e., top drivers will be at the back of the grid? Does that, is that adding to the entertainment value? Is it something that they want to try and enforce, actually promote penalties so that we get, races where people have to come through the field? I don't know if that's at all to do with their thinking. Apparently not, but it's always something that people will say. So Ben Sulayem's been under so much fire over the last couple of months, really. To be honest, 24 months, really, but especially in recent times, and actually gave some quite interesting comment on this. This was an article here on pitpass.com, which is, even in the top right, you guys can't quite about see it, but they've got the old Twitter logo, the old YouTube logo from that must be way over a decade ago. So I don't know what's going on here, but anyway, they're reporting on what was happening elsewhere, and these were some statements from Ben Sulayem. I think this is actually where he said that he's the head of the house, but he says, I know who's attacking me, and I think they know. Do you really think I'd be in this position if I had stupid people around me? Of course, my team is very smart. The paddock is a very small habitat. Everybody knows everybody. Whoever leaked or made up something about me, I know. And what do? I smile at them. I know who's behind it, and then I smile at them. I only ask for sincerity. I'm not interested in share price or ticket sales. We need honesty. Goes on to say that people are talking about a split, right? Formula One breaking away from the FIA. Do they really think that the big constructors would race in a championship without a regulatory body? Well, no, but they'd find a way to do it themselves. They get someone else to do it, and realistically, it's not going to happen, is it? But it's just something that is threatened quite often. And as he goes on to say, do you really think that people would invest into it? Do you think that it would be like another wrestling federation where you know who's going to win, where someone invests and suddenly they change the rules? No, it's about having clear rules first, and then you invest. Wrestling is a show. This is not, apparently. We have a show, but with a governing body, a show with rules. We make it fair and well controlled. The rest is up to you, your team, and your driver. And then he goes on to say, the day will come where we wake up without the FIA. With respect to others, it's different. Liberty has every right to sell, and so there could be another reality, and tomorrow F1 would no longer be with them. I respect those guys. They're smart people. I support them. They're here to make a profit, etc., etc. We need fairness here. So, I don't know. Again, it's just Ben Sulayem saying stuff, and sure, maybe his words make a bit of sense, but we don't usually have the head of the FIA being this forthright in what he has to say, calling people out, making it clear that he's the man in charge, charge, at least as far as he's concerned. And, well, I don't know if that's really going to last all that much longer. Speaking of the FIA, they have, of course, come up with the 2026 set of regulations. These are the current rumours as to what the cars are going to look like. Of course, we know that the power units are going to be dramatically different. These, though, are the cars. They're going to be smaller. They're going to be lighter. The question is how much. These are the comparisons that kind of AMUS have put together here on what they might look like. So this is, of course, the current car. This is the theoretical 2026 car, which, look, when you look at it like this, it's smaller for sure. Is it dramatically smaller? Probably not. You know, these cars need to go on a diet, as far as I'm concerned. They got to get smaller, they got to get lighter, and they will, according to the rules, according to what we're hearing about the rules. Is it enough, right? I mean, you look at these images, you think, like, is that really making that much difference? It's a positive, sure. I think, generally speaking, people want the cars to be smaller, more nimble, more agile, but they're not going to be how they were, you know, 15 years ago or so, which is maybe a bit of a shame, but it probably isn't something that we shouldn't expect, given the way things have been trending over the last several years. Really like 2017, right, when they decided, all right, performance above everything, let's just make these cars rapid. And it was, you know, the cars were beautiful and they were going incredibly fast, but then the dirty air was becoming a real problem. And, you know, it's difficult to go from what we have on the bottom here back to a 2004 spec car, right? I mean, it's going to be naturally, the step is going to be somewhat smaller, but another big talking point, no doubt, is this one. The F1 engine limit has been reduced from 4 power units down to 3. This is actually a very big deal. Now, firstly, to clarify, since like 2014, the limit has been 3. And just in terms of like internal combustion engines, which is the main thing people really talk about when we're talking about power units here, but there's of course other things in the allocation as well. But it's been 3 for a long time. Last year, in about April 2023, I think at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, they confirmed, the FIA did, they'd amended the rules to now permit 4 ICEs, turbochargers, MGU-Hs and MGU-Ks, 2 parts of the energy recovery system for the heat side and from the kinetic side. So now every driver allowed 4 of those compared to the previous 3. Now, it wasn't so clear as to why this was the case last season, why they allowed an increase, but the year before in 2022, there had been lots of unreliability, especially, let's not forget, from the Ferrari engines that caused loads of penalties. And then in 2023, more sprint races and just, you know, a lot of races in general. So I think the feeling was, well, you know, let's up the limit to 4 so that, you know, so that the teams can cope with this type thing. And actually, as it turned out, most teams had barely any difficulties staying to 4. The only reason why certain teams, okay, some teams had not great reliability, but even Ferrari stuck with 4 last year. We'll see the numbers in a second. I think Perez was over, but I think that was probably because of crash-induced damage to his parts to some degree. So this is what one of the articles on it goes to say, that this will therefore impact teams differently. The teams with the better reliability definitely are favoured from this change because only 3 power units across the entire season, and if you take a 4th, that's a 10-place grid drop, and if you take a 5th, then that's another 5 places on top of that. It's, for some reason, it's not 10, then 15, then 20 or whatever. It's 10, then 5, then 5. Don't really know why it's like that, but that's the rules, and we saw Mercedes use that to good advantage back in 2021 when Hamilton had the 5 place at Brazil for the new power unit, and, well, it was a rather good power unit as it turned out. You've got to wonder why exactly make this change when this season, 24 races, theoretically. Last year they were meant to be, was it 24, 23, but of course China never happens, and then Imola never happens, but this upcoming season it's going to be 24 again. China's going to be there, Imola's going to be there, and it's going to be the Canada we expected it to be, unless, you know, things happen like happened in Imola, for example, for China last year. But still, more races than ever, more, okay, same amount of sprinters last season, but more on-track running at a high rate than ever, and yet the same engines as previously, but less than before, less than last year, with all these extra races and everything that is going through. Like, it just seems incredibly difficult to believe the teams can actually get through this. So then you wonder, why have they done it? Well, reports indicate that Mercedes and Honda will be pleased with this change, or were straight up involved in making this change happen. Ferrari and Renault, less enthusiastic about this new limit. So this is what the Motorsport Italy, I believe, article goes on to say about this, that it's true that a regulation written 3 years ago provided only that 3 engines would be used, but you know, with the frozen power units and all this, that's now, well, it was changed. According to rumours, however, it was Honda and Mercedes who chose to reduce the available units back to 3, evidently in the awareness of putting Renault and Ferrari into difficulty in terms of reliability. We know the Alpine power unit is not very powerful, and it's also not very reliable. Like we saw that with Alonso especially, and even, plenty of examples even this season really with the Alpine units. Gasly, I think, had a couple of issues. And to be fair, Ferrari this year, it wasn't a massive problem for them, but the question has been, all right, how much do they have to reduce the power to allow that to happen? And there's certain teams maybe they think, all right, we can run our power units at a lesser rate to make them last longer, and maybe some power units, let's say Mercedes or Honda, of course that's Red Bull, believe that they stand to benefit more. So again, it's all politics, isn't it? When those teams apparently believe they stand to gain, and probably Mercedes more than anyone in theory, just by the numbers over the last decade. Mercedes have by far the fewest mechanical failures of any team. We'll see the numbers on that in a second. To be fair though, the most recent season, Verstappen had precisely 0 engine failures. Mercedes did have one with George Russell way back in Australia, right, when his engine conked out. So it's not like Mercedes are immune to mechanical failures, but it definitely happens more often for Alpine, certainly, and, in 2022, definitely Ferrari than it does for the other teams. Just to look at some of the numbers here, this is on maxf1.net, but these are the numbers during 2022, for example. So just to keep in mind, only 3 were allowed here. You've also got the control electronics and the energy store. You're only allowed 2 of those in the exhaust, of course, but 2 you're allowed of this. So most teams were okay, maybe they use 1 more, because sometimes what will happen is, let's say you're Verstappen, you're taking a grid drop in, was it Spa he did that season? You might as well just replace every component, because starting from 11th or starting from 20th, who really cares? You got the fastest car around Spa, and we saw what happened as a result. Of course, he ended up like 14th, didn't he, after quali, just because everyone else was taking a penalty there as well. But this is what happened in 2022. Pretty much everyone had to take some sort of penalty. Only Ricciardo didn't with 3, but everybody else used 4 units, because the theory was, and the theory still is to some degree, that if you have a limit of 3, the teams will use 4, because they think that it's better to use 4 and actually be able to run them near the limit and take a 10-second or take a taking place penalty than use 3 and really be struggling. This season, though, I expected more teams to use 5. I thought, all right, teams will go for 5 and they'll push them to the absolute limits. But actually, teams didn't really do that. With the exception of Perez, basically everybody else survived on 4. For some reason, Norris also only used 3 of these other ones. Maybe this was just Saturday at Abu Dhabi. Maybe he put some in for the race. I don't know. But most teams, most drivers just stuck to the limit and didn't have to take a penalty. This season, though, doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. Like, there's no way that these teams could get through 24 Grand Prix with no issues on this. And maybe Mercedes and Red Bull believe that they can, but even then, I think those teams are preparing to use 4. I guess their theory is that maybe Renault and especially Ferrari might struggle to get away with only 1 single penalty. They might have to take more. And just in general, if your engine's more reliable, you will benefit from less engines being used in the, in the grand scheme of things. This, for example, according to F1 Chart, is the mechanical retirements in the turbo hybrid era since 2014. So the first year, of course, as expected, there were quite a few. It's been reducing on average since then. And in 2018, Mercedes had 3 mechanical retirements. This season, they had 2, actually. Last season, Mercedes had 1 back in, it was Abu Dhabi, wasn't it, when Hamilton was forced to retire from the Grand Prix. And was it not the same? Actually, it was the same for Russell this year as well, and I think another Grand Prix. So still, they have an occasional one. But look at Mercedes' reliability, really. They average 1.8 reliability-related retirements per season, whereas other teams, Ferrari, are actually not as bad as you might think. They've averaged 3, but it's still not great. I mean, in 2022, they had 4 mechanical related failures, some of them quite spectacular. And look, Red Bull have got markedly better over the years since the absolute tragic days of 2017, 2018. In recent times, it's been much better. It's still been somewhat up and down. Like 2022, they had their problems, especially at the start of the season. 2023, it was, a fat 0 for the first time, like ever in the turbo hybrid era, which was very impressive. And therefore, Honda believe, Red Bull believe they're in a good position to take advantage of it and therefore have lobbied for it. So who does this change massively benefit? Probably Red Bull and Mercedes are right to believe that it benefits them on recent evidence, but it's not like Red Bull especially have had flawless reliability. Like even Perez mentioned this after Bahrain and Jeddah, that for the first couple of races, they both had some mechanical issues. Now that wasn't really ICE related, but it was more gearbox related they were struggling with, and there were rumours that Red Bull drivers at Bahrain were getting told to, lose a second a lap on what they could do just to protect the components, right? So difficult to say who it's going to favour, but I'm sure Ferrari won't be too happy about it, and probably Mercedes will be. I guess the other point is that with more power units being potentially taken as a penalty, that means more penalties, that means more mixed up grids, that means you can say more entertainment, possibly, whether you argue that that's like forced entertainment, like wrestling, like maybe Mohammed bin Sulayem thinks that it is, I don't know, but it's just one of those things that I don't imagine that the sport is too much against, because it means that compared to last season, more grid drops and therefore more mixed up orders. You know, maybe you need a bit of that when the seasons might be quite dull, as they have been for, well, certainly last season wasn't exactly a banger, was it? Speaking of that, actually, this just to mention was the average gap to pole 2022 compared to 2023 from Formula Stat Analysis. So Red Bull were, you know, in 2023 they were mostly on pole, but sometimes they weren't, and therefore they were slightly off the mark. But both years they've been there or thereabouts. Ferrari were very close, pretty much where Red Bull were in terms of qualifying pace in 2022. This year they were a little bit further behind. Mercedes, it was quite interesting because the W13 was, on the balance of things, probably a better race car really than a W14 was, especially after the upgrades. But in qualifying, it was quite a way back. Like the Mercedes this year was actually on average half as close to the leading car than the W13 was. So you look at these numbers, you think, wow, Mercedes had a good season this year, but definitely that's not the case, and qualifying performance does not show the full delta. You get McLaren's improvement. I mean, Aston Martin's improvement is nothing short of amazing, really, compared to where they were in 2022. And then these are the other examples on the grid where, to be fair, everyone really got closer to the front runners, but that did not mean that in a race situation things were dramatically different. So very much interested to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.